Robert started this journey because something didn't feel right. He was 60 years old. He wasn't sick. He wasn't broken. His life hadn't fallen apart, but somewhere along the way, Robert had begun to disappear from his own life. He'd gained some weight, lost some strength, lost some discipline, and maybe even lost a little bit of that edge that once made him feel so capable. So, Robert started changing things. He started moving again. He challenged his body. He cleaned up some habits. He began controlling his mornings instead of allowing the world to control them. And gradually, Robert started feeling like Robert again. But then something happened that he hadn't expected. He realized that this wasn't really about him. One evening, Robert looked across the room at his wife, the woman who had shared decades with him. He thought about his children, his grandchildren, the people who still called when something went wrong, the people who still needed his experience, his strength, his judgment, or sometimes even simply his presence and his prayers. And Robert realized something. There are still people counting on me. That's when this journey changed. Robert wasn't exercising simply because he wanted better numbers on the scale. He wasn't getting stronger because he desperately wanted to look younger. And he certainly wasn't trying to become 30 again. Robert was preparing himself for the life that was still ahead of him. Because 60 isn't the end of the story. Maybe Robert has another 30, maybe 40 years, maybe considerably less. None of us gets to know that information. But Robert finally understood that the question isn't simply, how many years do I have left? The better question is, what am I going to do with them? There's still work Robert can do. There are people he can help. There are grandchildren who are watching how he lives. There are lessons he's learning the hard way that somebody younger desperately needs to hear. There are places he hasn't seen, conversations he hasn't had, things he hasn't built, people he hasn't forgiven, and probably a few adventures he hasn't even thought of yet. No, Robert isn't finished, and neither are you. If you've watched Robert over these last few episodes and recognized a little bit of yourself in him, maybe that's the real point of this series. Maybe you've drifted. Maybe you've gotten comfortable. Maybe you stopped doing some of the things that once made you feel strong and capable. Fine. You don't have to spend the rest of your life regretting it. Start where you are. Take care of your body. Build some discipline back into your daily life and its habits. Do difficult things occasionally. Basically to remind yourself that you still can do them. But don't make the mistake of thinking that health is the destination. It isn't. Health is what allows us to keep showing up. For your wife. For your husband, for your children, for your grandchildren, for your friends, for your community, and whatever work still you believe you were put here to perform. So this is where we leave Robert today, not transformed into some superhero, not suddenly young again, certainly not perfect, just awake, stronger, more deliberate, more useful, and once again, looking forward instead of backwards. Robert thought this journey was about getting his youth back. Well, it wasn't. Robert was trying to get himself back. And somewhere along the way, he did. So, maybe Robert's story isn't really ending. Maybe this is simply the point where you stop watching his and start writing your own. Good luck as you pursue that endeavor. God bless.